Well, next week, Jaron's words will be appropriate. Are we still in Acts? And I'll say, we are today. But we're rounding. I mean, we're not just rounding third. We're almost home. Excuse me. We're in chapter 27, and before we go forward, I want to share a little flashback with you. Many Christmases ago, Ann got me a buck knife because I like knives, and I wasn't a big gun carrier back then, but I just like to have a nice little surprise just in case trouble finds me. So I was sporting it, and it's still a big knife. It's a deterrent. And we went over to my folks' house for Christmas, and my niece was there with her boyfriend at the time, and he kind of got my spidey sense going a little bit. But even if he did, he's a boy sniffing around, one of the female family members. So I was duty bound to show him my new Christmas gift. And I said, hey, let me show you something. And I showed him my knife. I shared what you did with the knife and what I wouldn't mind doing with my knife to him if he ran afoul of my niece. And then I was like, well, Merry Christmas, and I went home. I ruined enough days, so I was gone. And so mood killer since whenever. And so they tell me that when she got done fixing plates or whatever, my niece went and sat down next to him, and he's, whoa, 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 whoa. He backed away from her. So apparently I left, because I was gone. I wasn't even, but he thought, this fool may pop in and here, and he later told her, he says, hey, I didn't sign up for this. And, sometimes the Lord brings out the buck knife just to test our hearts, to see if we're going to say, Lord, I didn't sign up for this. He because everybody signs up for ministry, for marriage, for kids, because, I don't know how Jay did it. It probably could be because Ann looked so pretty. And he probably slipped him in. He probably mumbled it in when he said, because I heard the better, but I didn't hear the worse. I heard the health, but I didn't hear the sickness. I heard the richer, I didn't hear the poor. I think he snuck that stuff in, because I don't remember hearing that stuff. But no one does. And and when someone steps out in the ministry, you see the increase. You see, man, what the Lord's going to do. It's going to be great. And like I said, you meet your sugar lump, and you're like, can't live without you. We're never going to fight. You listen to these old cranky couples, and you think, what's wrong with them? They're doing it wrong. I'm going to show those turkeys how you do it. And then eventually you become one of those turkeys. But you go through it, and all of that stuff is God saying, he's waiting for you to say, I didn't sign up for this. But the kicker is, you did. I did. And we're going to see Paul go through it, and I'll revisit that thought, but I couldn't think of any better way to say it, to open it. So Acts 27, verse 1, it says, now, when it was decided that we should sail to Italy, Rome, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to one named Julius, a centurion of the Augustan regiment. So entering a ship of Adramyttium, we put to sea, meaning to sail along the coasts of Asia. Aristarchus, and you'll see him in some of Paul's letters, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. And you also know that you're going to see us and we, because Luke is with him. So that's why the tense, the pronoun, if you would, changes. And the next day we sailed at Sidon. We landed at Sidon, And Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him liberty to go to his friends and receive care. Now I've got, my Bible looks like a coloring book, because I wanted some stuff to pop. I didn't want to miss it. But if you're a note taker, this is as good as it gets for Paul at this trip. This is, Paul gets to eat his dessert before the vegetables. And because he starts off and he gets with this soldier, and the soldier's nice to Paul. The soldier, you can go and visit with your friends. He gives them liberty. And sometimes when you start off on those ventures that I just mentioned, you have that honeymoon period where everyone's happy. Man, I can't believe we didn't do this before. And, the new car smell, if you would. And it starts off pretty good. Wait, there's more. And when we had put to sea from there, we sailed under the shelter of Cyprus because the winds were contrary. And when we had sailed over the sea, which is off Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia, and there the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing to Italy, and he put us on board. And when we had sailed slowly many days, and arrived with difficulty off of Cnidus, the wind not permitting us to proceed, we sailed off the shelter of Crete off Samone. Passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens near the city of Lasea. And now, when much time had been spent and sailing was now dangerous because the fast was already over, Paul advised them. Now, I'm not done with my highlights, but have you picked up on the theme? I cheated. I highlighted, so I'm going to go back and like I said, there's more. There's certain words that popped to me as I was reading this. The winds were contrary. We sailed slowly. We arrived with difficulty. We passed it with difficulty. After much time had been spent, it was now dangerous. I'm not a sailor like my man over here, but I don't think those are good terms. I don't think, boy, we went and this was difficult and this was hard. We went to vacation, but then the engine blew up. But we got the engine fixed, but then the tire went flat. And then we went down and bing, 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 checked the oil engine light. But I just changed the oil because the engine blew up. And all this stuff is going wrong. Phoenix, because Arizona's nice that time of year. Just kidding, different Phoenix. A harbor of Crete, opening toward the southwest and the northwest in winter. It was a better place to hang out. If you're going to be stuck, let's go to San Francisco. Well, that's a bad example. Let's go to San Diego. Let's not go to San Francisco.
Go to Boston where the real people are.
Why you got to start that? I mean, it's I just said the thing about punching people, and then you got to tempt me. I'm just kidding. So.
You can edit that out.
No. It says, when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their desire, putting out to sea, they sailed close by Crete. Now you notice everybody, comfort is the name of the game. Oh, the winds are dying down. It's still going, but not going too rough. The harbor, it's not the best harbor, but it's not about necessity. It's about niceties. And sometimes, God says, I will cover all your needs. He doesn't say I'm going to cover all your wants. He says, I said I would provide your daily bread. I didn't say there'd be butter on it, but there'll be bread. I didn't even say it was going to be soft bread, but it'll be bread. But they still don't quite get it. It says, and they put out to sea, they sailed close by Crete, but not long after a tempestuous headwind arose called a Euroclydon. I tried to get Ann to let me name one of the girls that, but she didn't go for it. Just kidding. I mean, that's a boy's name, so you can't do that. So, but you get these, I like it because sometimes that's the way it is. Sometimes that's the way the Lord does it. What are you talking about, Jeremy? There's something you should do, but you don't want to do it, or you're doing it and you're like, it's getting rough. I don't like this. And then, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to stop. And then the Lord says, and then the phone, I got magic powers. I blew it and the phone rang. And then it gets nice and comfortable. It gets nice. The weather's a good temperate 75. It's great. And you're like, you know what, Lord, I think I'm going to get back on the boat. You get back on the boat, going your way, and then it starts going crazy. And it's like you're riding with Gilligan and the skipper. Then it starts, and the Lord says, I just need you back on the boat. Yeah, it's back to rough seas, but hang on, because sometimes it gets rough. So when the ship was caught and could not head into the wind, we let her drive. And running under the shelter of an island called Clauda. We secured the skiff with difficulty. When they had taken it on board, they used cables to undergird the ship, and fearing lest they should run aground on the Syrtis sands, they struck sail, and so were driven. And because we were exceedingly tempest-tossed, I missed that one, the next day they lightened the ship. We went through a tough time after I got separated from CHP, and it was before I got on with Orchard. We were, I kept my girlish figure because we didn't have anything to eat. We were, I was taking the penny rolls to the bank, and we were making it, but whew, it was tough. But it was funny because I noticed I didn't need all those DVDs that I've been collecting forever. I didn't need all those CDs that I've been collecting forever. So I lightened the ship. I went on down to Rasputin's, because you spent $15 on that? Well, I'll give you $5. Well, it beats the nothing I got now, so okay. And it's funny because sometimes you're carrying more baggage than you should be carrying. Stuff that may not be sin, but it's definitely not a help. And well, I can carry it. Well, I'm tough. I can carry it. I'm real tired walking this walk, running this race with you, but I can carry this stuff that's kind of unnecessary. I can do it. But it's funny because when times get tougher and tougher and tougher, you can throw some stuff overboard. Stuff that you thought you just couldn't live without. Now it's just taking up space. It's just costing money to store it. And you can get rid of it. That's sometimes the reason for the storm. So it says, verse 19, on the third day, we threw the ship's tackle overboard and with our own hands. Now, when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and no small tempest beat on us, all hope that we will be saved was finally given up. So, tempestuous, with difficulty, tempest-tossed, we lost all hope, and my personal favorite, but after a long abstinence for food. This, by the way, if you're going to do PR work for an excursion trip, you don't want any of these words on the brochure, just in case you're wondering. I don't know why people don't sign up for this adventure tour that we're doing at the church. People ain't going to pay for this. People are going to say, I should have stayed home. None of this is good. But it is God. And I forget that. We forget that. God never said it'd be easy. He just said it would be worth it. We can't look at, and on the flip side, because a lot of people say, man, things are going great. God must be happy. Maybe. You got to look at what you're doing. Things are going horrible. God's not happy. Maybe. You got to look at what you're doing. And like with Paul had to go back because I'm sure he doubted. And we'll see in a verse, he had to have doubted. But I'm thinking he went back in his mind's eye. The Lord told me. The Lord told me I'm going to Rome. And I'm on the right road. It's a rough road, but I'm on the right road. Why? Because I feel it. Because I see it. No. Because God told me. And that's what we got to bank on, because feelings, they come and go. Circumstances change overnight. And we can't be tossed around by them. We got to be anchored in what the Lord has shown us, what he's told us. He says, Paul stood in the midst of them after, and granted, I don't think they were fasting to seek the Lord. Who wants to eat on a boat that's tossed up and, up and down? I think I told you years ago I was working at a church, and one of the guys owned a boat, and he says, hey, I'll take the kids out fishing. So we went out to the Dana Point Bay, and we did this twice. The first time it was great. I caught a bunch of fish, had a good old time. The second time we went out, it was overcast. They got pictures of me, and I looked like this. And that's the way I felt. I thought I was never going to eat again. I felt a lot of ways on that boat. Hungry was not one of them. And and it was funny because soon as I set foot on the pier, is that a McDonald's? As soon I was ready to go. I was ready to eat. But all that to say is they were not hungry because I mean, who wants to eat in that storm? Who can eat in that storm? So then Paul, he stood up in the midst of them and he said, all us married guys maybe know this. Men, you should have listened to me. I think if we went over to the ladies' study right now, they're probably reading this verse right now. I'm just saying. It'd be funny if they were. But anyway, yeah, I live with 3 women. Do you realize how often I hear that?
As soon as you said that, the women started laughing in there.
I think they got our room. They got the room bugged. But I get that a lot. Man, you should have listened to me. And have not sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. And now I urge you, take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. And indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you. Now, this is so cool. Because the Lord, he says to me, and he says to you, and he says to the whole world, he says, you may lose your stuff. You may lose your reputation. You may lose whatever. But you will survive. You're going to get through it. And you will have me. And here, Paul, he stands up and he says, I can assure you because God has assured me. And I like it because the Lord says, do not be afraid. And you know what that tells me? Paul was afraid. And I'm so sick of these pseudo-spiritual idiots. I mean, these brothers that, I don't fear this and I don't fear that and where's your faith and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, shut up, dude. Are you telling me that Paul feared, but you don't fear? Joshua, the dude who said, God, I'm running out of daylight to kill people. Can you give me an hour more? You know, not to play, but to kill. You telling me that Joshua was afraid, but you're not afraid. Yeah, okay. Quit lying. How about that? And all these people was like, yeah, you know what? I get afraid. I get discouraged. I get dismayed. I get defeated. I get it all. I go up and down, just like this story, up and down. And I try to remember the stuff the Lord has told me in the past. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just want to stay in the funk that I'm in. Sometimes the Lord's like, remember when, I don't want to hear it, Lord, because I'm pouting. I don't want to hear it, Lord. I'm like a pig just rolling around in the muck. Maybe that's where Bill Cosby got it from. Maybe Bill Cosby saw that anyway. And then the Lord graciously, he says, okay, you're not looking up your journal. You're not looking at your Bible where you had online. So I'm going to tell you again. I'm going to remind you again. Because evidently, he had doubts. Evidently, from this, I will get Paul was afraid. Paul didn't think he was going to make it to Rome. He probably thought he was doing something wrong. Because the Lord comes up and he says, don't be afraid. You're going to make it to Caesar. You are on the right track. And maybe if you don't need to hear it today, you're probably going to need to hear it tomorrow. Because it's all, you know how this, it's all smooth sailing, boys. Whoever said that was a liar. I mean, praise the Lord, there are those moments, there are those seasons where it's smooth sailing, but no, it's not the Love Boat. It's Battleship. Until we get to heaven. That's the ultimate safe harbor where we get off and say, y'all got a McDonald's up here, Lord? I could go for a McMuffin. I'm hungry. I've worked up a powerful hunger, excuse me. You want to go get some McDonald's up? No, you're a Wiener Schnitzel guy.
And I got a credit card too, so we'll go.
Oh, heck yeah. See, the Lord has spoken. So he says, therefore, take heart, men. I believe God that it will be just as it was told me. And we can tell people, we can tell ourselves that. Take heart, buck up, cheer up, encourage yourselves. I believe God. And we need to, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we're Christians and we know what the right answer is. Do you believe God? Yeah, Jeremy, I believe God. Okay, we all right. Yeah, you passed. That's the right answer. Is that the real answer? Because sometimes I don't. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes, well, Lord, you said it, but you didn't mean it for me. Or Lord, you said it, but I was a better person back then. And you got to come back to, I either believe him or I don't. He's not a liar. So if he said it, he meant it. He says, however, we must run aground on a certain island. Now, when the 14th night had come, as we were driven up and down in the Adriatic Sea, about midnight, the sailors sensed that they were drawing near some land. Excuse me. And they took some soundings and found it to be about 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little further, they took soundings again and found it to be about 15 fathoms. Then, fearing lest we should run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern, and they prayed for day to come. If you've ever it's funny because it seems like all the bad stuff happens at night. When you're sick, when you're stranded, when you're cold, that's why I don't go camping. Because you get out there, you get sick, cold, and stranded. And you're like, boy, I sure could use some daylight. Everything is worse. I mean, I remember I was in the Philippines, and they took us to this resort, and they were pumped. They were excited. And I was like, can we go back to the city? I mean, it was on the water and everything. But, okay, I'm big by American standards. Over there, they want to use me as a prop for David and Goliath and stuff, and Eglon. And I mean, I'm huge over there. I'm huge. And so they've got this elevated floor, and it's all made out of bamboo. And this is like the structure. So I'm walking around as and I'm thinking, I was like, do you guys see what I'm seeing? So I'm not even thinking I'm gonna, make it through the night in the hut. And so I'm sick. I'm sick enough where I think I'm gonna die. And you're looking up, and there's just bugs crawling all over the roof, because it's open air. So and they got a fan, so it's just swirling the bugs around. And then you get up and you use the bathroom, and you're just hoping that you don't, because it's like, oh, did you hear about the big fat American? He broke our floor. And so I'm sitting up there, and I'm trying not to move, and I feel horrible, and I pull my watch up, and I press it just to see, and I'm praying that maybe it's 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe it's close enough to go out and read my Bible and just get some daylight. 9 o'clock. Are you kidding me? Like PM, like, is it going backwards? And it was the long one. I've had many a long night. And so I get the whole, we pray for daylight to come. Sometimes, it's already bad, but when it's dark, when you don't see what's going on, it's even worse. But I got to tell you, with all those bugs swirling around me, I turned the light off. I just figured I could get bit and see it or get bit and not see it. So, who cares? So verse 30, it says, and as the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship, when they let down the skiff into the sea under the pretense of putting out anchors from the prow, or pro, I don't know, I'm not a sailor.
The bow.
No, it's a P in mine.
Oh, mine's a B.
Well, okay.
It's all right.
Well, from that thing, prow. Okay, right. Oh, thanks, guys. Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. And then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the skiff and let it fall. So everybody was afraid. But, we've often given messages about stay on the boat. You got doubts in the Lord, you just stay on the boat. Well, what about eternal security? Stay on the boat. Do you believe in Jesus? Yeah. Well, keep believing in Jesus. Well, what if I quit believing in Jesus? Don't do that. Stay on the boat. Well, is it eternal security if I walk away from the Lord? Okay, you ready? I don't know. So stay on the boat. I wouldn't want to take the risk. So I tell people, it's really, stay on the boat. You'll be saved. I don't know about not getting off the boat. So stay on the boat. So it says, as the day was about to dawn, Paul implored them to all take food, saying, today is the 14th day. You have waited and continued without food and eaten nothing. Therefore, I urge you to take nourishment, for this is your survival, since not a hair will fall from the head of any of you. Hey, I get it. You're tired. You're sick. You're demoralized. You're seasick. But you need to eat something.
Do you notice they're believing Paul now?
Yes.
They're not believing the houseman or the ship's owner.
Yeah. Because
Because they just hit rock bottom and there's only one other person to believe.
yeah. Yep. Thank you. And that is the best point. Because all of a sudden now people can listen to him. And so he says, eat. And he says, you're going to need it. First time I was ever told this, you need to eat. I was at the academy and I had just passed out. I got up and I didn't feel right. But I wasn't going to go down to the staff office. Sir, can I grant? I feel weird. That was just not going to go well. So I was like, well, Lord, you got me here, so you're going to have to carry me through this. And so I made it through PT, barely. I did my pull-ups. They held me up and pushed me up, my classmates. And I was like, once I get going on this run, this 3-mile run, I'll make it. And they were just yapping and flapping and flapping and yapping. And next thing I know, I heard, what's wrong with him? We'll pick him up and bring him, over to the wall. They're talking about me, because I'm sitting up here, and I was out. And they took me to the medic and eat, Grant. I'm like, what? Eat? You're not eating enough. You know how many calories you're burning up here? I'm like, what? I was like, I went on a diet to get up here. Well, you're up here now. Eat. And so then I'm eating, and then the sergeant comes over. The angel of mercy is, Grant, are you the one that passed out this morning? Sir, yes, sir. Well, I'm looking at what you're eating. It's a bunch of garbage. All it is fat and grease, Grant. And he goes on and on. And this was them being nice. This was them reaching out to me and trying to help me. And basically, all the stuff that you do up here, you're burning it off. You need to eat, or else you're going to stay sick. And that's what, Paul's saying, now's not the time to go on a fast. Eat, because you're going to need the strength. And when he had said these things, he took bread and he gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. And then they were all encouraged and also took food themselves. And in all, we were 276 persons on the ship. So when they had eaten enough, then they lightened the ship and threw out the wheat into the sea. One last meal. Okay, did you get enough? Did you get enough? Okay, chuck it. And when it was day, they did not recognize the land. They'd never been there before, in other words. But they observed a bay with a beach, and they started up the first Calvary Chapel. Just kidding. Onto which they planned to run the ship if possible. And they let go the anchors and let them into the sea. And meanwhile, tossing the rudder ropes, and they hoisted the mainsail to the wind and made for shore. But striking a place where the two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the prow stuck fast and remained immovable, but the stern was being broken up by the violence of the waves. Sometimes you just can't catch a break. Because he's still in the will of God, but guess what? Stuff is there's the day didn't break, and the rainbow didn't come over, and the sun didn't come down, and the birds didn't start shining. Everything that was going wrong kept on going wrong. But the reason why they were encouraged was not because their situation changed. Their point of focus changed. They weren't looking at the sea. They weren't looking at the sky. They weren't looking at all the stuff that was broken. They were, as Jan pointed out, they were looking at the preacher who was looking to his God. And they said, you know what? This guy was right. He's been right so far. We're going to keep listening to this guy. But they weren't looking at the situations. And the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wanting to save Paul, he kept them from their purpose. Do you realize that's us? I mean, that's us right now in our family, like in our greater family, because we're all related to people that don't know the Lord. That's us in America. That's us in this world, because the judgment is coming. But what does Thessalonians tells us? It says the Lord, he's being held back until we're out of here. And he says, hey, he would have killed all those prisoners, but he wanted to save Paul. The fact that Paul was there was a covering for those guys. And a lot of times you just don't know. Smart people, smart heathens, always realize that we got to get a Christian on the book. Because it's kind of superstition, but there's something to it. Because You get a Christian here, because we're weird. We do change the feel of a place, because we go in there and we don't cuss, and we bring the drama down to a minimum, and we clown around, and we work hard, and we just kind of redeem the whole situation. And some people are like, man, I wish we could have 10 of this guy. And then some of them are like, I wish we had 0 of this guy. You're fired because you make me feel funny. It's called conviction. And right here, Paul redeemed the whole situation. And I guarantee you, none of those prisoners thought, oh, it's the stupid rabbi. He's the reason why none of us are getting killed. But he was. And sometimes the Lord will use you to redeem a situation, a family gathering, a family, a job, whatever it is, just by you being there. And people aren't going to come up and say, hey, thanks for being here. People don't get nearly as drunk as they used to before you showed up. People don't, and because I don't think they're listening, but at the warehouse, it's not like they would come around me and not cuss, but it hit me. I think they toned it down, which is amazing because they still turned it up pretty good. But I do think they turned it down a skosh when the rejected rabbi came by. And sometimes, no one's ever going to say that, but take heart. You're making a difference just by being there. Well, anyway, I'm going to make a difference by wrapping it up. He commanded that those who could swim should jump overboard first and get to land, and the rest, some on boards and some on parts of the ship. And so it was that they all escaped safely to land. So basically, I think this was the first Calvary Chapel, because you got a beach, so they probably set up a church, and you got these guys surfing. So it must have been, I'm just kidding. That plays in Southern California. It doesn't play up here. But anywho, sometimes it's rough. Sometimes it's not perfect. But you got to ask yourself, am I doing what God told me to do? Yes. Then keep going. Am I doing what God told me to do? Yes. But, okay, rewind, backtrack. Go back to just yes. And then you got to let the chips fall where they fall. Sometimes they fall all over the place to make a big mess. But at the end of the day, you can say, I did what the Lord told me to do. I'm in his will. And I got to tell you, it sure does, it helps the medicine go down. I mean, it's still, okay, I know, I'm expected to say this. It helps the broccoli go down. NyQuil goes down fine by itself. Yes. Ann cooks those and I leave. I can't even, whew. Anyway. So there you go, I'm done.